initially expected. His family carried an older American sports story. His paternal grandfather, Hipólito Arenas Sr., was a first-generation Cuban American who played in the Negro Leagues. That history did not predetermine Gilbert's game, but it gives his story a deeper echo. Another Arenas had competed in a world where talent alone did not guarantee entry through the front door. But talent doesn't always announce itself early. Coming out of high school, Arenas was ranked 99th nationally in the class of 1999. 99th placed him far outside the class's celebrated inner circle. He was not treated as a future franchise player. He arrived at Arizona with a chip already forming on his shoulder. And the kid nobody ranked was about to walk into a camp run by the greatest player alive and score on his first 8 straight possessions. Before his freshman year at Arizona, Arenas attended Michael Jordan's basketball camp. Every young player there wanted Jordan to notice him. Arenas was selected for Jordan's team and then made himself impossible to overlook by scoring on his first 8 possessions. 8 for 8, in front of Michael Jordan. And Jordan noticed. He told Arizona coach Lute Olson that this kid deserved time on the court. When the best player who ever lived vouches for you, people start rethinking that 99th ranking real quick. At Arizona, Arenas backed it up. He arrived as a 17-year-old and made an immediate impact. By his sophomore season, he was named first team All-Pac-10, and he helped push the Arizona Wildcats all the way to the 2001 National Championship game. Arizona lost the title game to Duke, 82-72. Arenas, reportedly playing through a knee injury, endured one of his roughest nights on the largest stage, 10 points on 4 of 17 shooting. It is tempting to treat that injury as a prophecy for his later NBA decline, but the available record does not prove a direct connection. What the night established was simpler. Even his college peak ended with talent limited by a body that was not fully available. He decided he was ready for the NBA anyway. But the interviews that were supposed to sell him nearly ended his career before it ever really started. On paper, Gilbert Arenas should have gone in the first round of the 2001 NBA draft. The workouts were strong. The talent was obvious, but something went sideways in the interviews. Teams raised concerns about how he came across in the room, and that hesitation cost him. He slid, and he slid, and he kept sliding, all the way to the 31st overall pick, where the Golden State Warriors finally called his name in the second round. And that's where the legend of the number gets born. By his own telling, Arenas chose to wear 0 to represent the number of minutes the so-called experts predicted he would play in the league. That's how he framed it. A low-end second-round prospect turning their doubt into his identity. Every time he checked into a game, that 0 was his answer. Arenas later told a revealing story about his rookie year. After rapidly spending his initial salary and signing bonus, he ended up sleeping at the Warriors arena. He framed the experience as a turning point because the empty building left him focused on basketball. The work may have helped make him, but the circumstances also exposed the impulsiveness that would remain beside the discipline throughout his career. One season later, that second-round afterthought became the most improved player in the entire league, and he insisted there was nothing improved about him at all. The 2002-2003 season is when Golden State stopped treating Gilbert Arenas like a leftover. In his second year in the league, he won the NBA Most Improved Player award, averaging 18.3 points, 6.3 assists, and 4.7 rebounds a night, and the team moved with him. The Warriors jumped from 21 wins to 38. It was a real leap, with a young guard suddenly carrying a franchise's hopes. When Arenas received the Most Improved trophy, however, he challenged the premise. He said there had not been much to improve. He had simply received the minutes and experience he believed he always deserved. In his mind, the player had been there all along. The league was late to notice. That response revealed the two sides of Arenas already growing together. He possessed the discipline to turn an opportunity into a career, but also an appetite for turning every slight into theater. The combination made him magnetic. It could also make him difficult to contain. But that answer created a brand new problem for Golden State, and it was the kind of problem that changes franchises, because now everybody could see what Arenas was becoming. And the way the league's rules were written back then, the Warriors were about to learn they might not be able to keep the very player they'd rescued from the second round. Once the rest of the league saw what Golden State had stumbled into, the money started moving, and Washington moved first. After Arenas turned 21, the Wizards put a 6-year contract worth $60 million on the table and made him the face of their franchise. For a kid who slid to the 31st pick, that was more than a paycheck. That was validation with a dollar sign on it. Here's the twist that made this story bigger than one contract. The Warriors, the team that drafted him, couldn't do anything about it. They were over the salary cap, and because Arenas had come out of the second round, the rules of the day didn't give Golden State the tools to match Washington's offer. So the player they rescued walked right out the door, and there was nothing they could legally do to stop it. The loophole drew enough attention that the league created what became known as the Gilbert Arenas rule, giving teams greater protection when restricted free agents had not been first-round picks. Arenas now had his name attached permanently to the NBA's business structure. His contract had exposed a flaw in the rules before he had even reached his prime. And in Washington, he didn't waste any time proving the money was smart. By the 2004-2005 season, Arenas teamed up in the backcourt with Larry Hughes, and together they formed the highest-scoring backcourt in the entire league. Two guards putting up numbers night after night, dragging a franchise that had been irrelevant for years back towards something that mattered. For the first time since 1997, Washington was heading to the playoffs, and Arenas was about to hit the shot that ended a two-decade drought. That 2004-2005 season is when it all came together. Arenas made his first All-Star game. He led the Wizards in scoring at 25.5 points a game, good for 7th in the whole league, and the team won 45 games. Enough to punch that first playoff ticket the city had been waiting years to see. But regular season wins aren't what people remember. They remember the moment. First round, Game 5 against the Chicago Bulls. The clock winding down, the building holding its breath. Arenas rose up from 16 feet and let it go as time expired. It dropped, 112-110. Wizards win. And that shot wasn't just a highlight. It cracked open a door that had been shut for a generation. Washington went on to win that series, the franchise's first playoff series victory in more than 20 years. 20 years. There were grown fans in that city who had never seen their team win a playoff series in their adult lives. And here came the second-round kid with the number 0, doing it with the game on the line. That's the moment the whole perception of him flipped. He wasn't a nice story anymore. He wasn't a reclamation project. He was the cornerstone, the guy you hand the ball to when the clock says 4 seconds and the season is sitting right there on the rim. The doubt that built him was finally fully answered on the court. And a fan site was about to hand him a nickname that turned him from a very good player into a legend, Agent Zero. The nickname came from the fans. In 2006, a Wizards fan site started calling him Agent Zero, playing off that number on his back. Arenas liked it so much it stuck, and honestly, it fit him better than anything a marketing department could have dreamed up. He also picked up another one along the way, Hibachi, because of how he cooked opponents once he got hot, and in this stretch, he was hot almost every night. Arenas also arrived at exactly the right moment in basketball culture. Before players routinely spoke to millions through social media, he wrote an unpredictable NBA blog, announced grudges, shared jokes, and let fans inside the running monologue in his head. He became a star of the young basketball internet without waiting for a polished corporate campaign. Washington did not merely follow his scoring totals. The city followed a character whose next shot, prediction, or strange confession might appear at any moment. That direct relationship made every hot streak feel communal, as if the fans were helping write the legend while it was happening. Look at the 2005-2006 season. Arenas averaged 29.3 points a game, 4th in the league, along with 6.1 assists and 2 steals a night. He wasn't just scoring, he was doing it with an edge, with a mouth, with a grudge he wore like cologne. The clearest example is that game against the Phoenix Suns, when he dropped 54 points, and the story behind it is pure Arenas. He'd publicly declared he would average 50 points against teams run by coaches who had left him off the national team roster. And on that night, he was reportedly eyeing Suns chairman Jerry Colangelo the whole time, making good on the promise with the man right there to see it. That's not a player, that's a personality with a jump shot. Then came the signature night, December 17th, 2006. Arenas hung a career-high 60 points on the Los Angeles Lakers, adding 8 rebounds and 8 assists in an overtime win, 147-141, 60 against the Lakers. And in that overtime alone, he poured in 16 points, which set an NBA record at the time for the most points ever scored in a single overtime period. He was fearless in the final seconds, too. In January of 2007, he hit back-to-back buzzer beaters, a 32-footer to beat the Bucks, and then another game winner to knock off the Utah Jazz. He'd become one of the most feared late-game shooters alive. But this was the mountaintop, and Arenas didn't know it yet, because that same season would be the last time his body let him be this player. The 2006-2007 season was the final one in which Gilbert Arenas made both the All-Star game and an All-NBA team. At the height of his powers, averaging close to 30, hitting game winners, and backing up his public confidence, he had already reached the top. The decline arrived quickly through a major knee injury. During a game against Charlotte, Gerald Wallace fell into Arenas' leg and tore his MCL. This was not the gradual fading of a scorer, losing half a step with age. A collision interrupted a 25-year-old guard at the moment Washington's offense and identity had become inseparable from him. The next season, 2007-2008, he managed only 8 games. 8. A player who had been carrying a franchise reduced to a spectator in street clothes. And yet, even with all that uncertainty, Washington still believed in what he had been. On July 13, 2008, the Wizards re-signed him to a 6-year contract worth $111 million. The contract committed $111 million to a star whose recovery remained uncertain. Lingering injuries kept him off the floor for nearly the entire 2008-2009 season, and he did not debut until March 28th, with the schedule almost gone. Washington's decision was understandable because of the player he had been, but increasingly painful because of the player his knee no longer allowed him to be consistently. Before the collision, defenders had to honor Arenas several steps beyond the three-point line and still brace for his first move toward the rim. His size, strength, shooting range, and acceleration made every choice dangerous. After the operations, the imagination remained, but the body could no longer deliver every idea at the same speed. Agent Zero still saw the opening. He could no longer trust that his knee would carry him through it. Washington now carried a superstar contract while its star could rarely play. The locker room had been constructed around Arenas' confidence and production, but neither could repair damaged tissue. That pressure does not explain or excuse what happened next. It describes the unstable environment in which an immature dispute became a franchise-changing decision. And into all that frustration, on a team flight back from Phoenix, a card game was about to spark the argument that changed the meaning of his name forever. For years, the world thought it knew why this happened. The early word, from wire reports, from national coverage, even from teammate Karen Butler's later memoir, was that it all came down to money, a gambling debt gone sour. But Arenas himself has pushed back hard on that. In a 2018 interview, he said the truth was uglier and dumber than a debt. It was a card game. Boré, on a team flight home from Phoenix, and the trash talking got personal. That's his account, and the accounts don't fully agree, so keep both in your mind at once. What isn't in dispute is what came next, and it's the part that still makes you shake your head. On December 24th, 2009, Christmas Eve, Arenas admitted to storing unloaded firearms in his locker at the Verizon Center, breaking both NBA rules and District of Columbia law. He didn't hide it. He owned it. The scene inside that locker room comes to us mostly through Butler's memoir, Tough Juice, which was later excerpted by The Washington Post. By that account, Arenas laid out 4 guns in front of his stall, the same stalls that Michael Jordan once used, and told teammate Javaris Crittenton to pick one. And Crittenton, by that telling, produced his own gun, already loaded, and cocked it. The versions split on the exact physical sequence. First-hand accounts reported by The Washington Post said the loaded weapon was not pointed at Arenas, while other retellings described the positioning differently. Arenas later framed his own unloaded firearms as a joke meant to provoke a teammate. The choreography remains disputed. The danger and astonishing failure of judgment do not. Karen Butler's memoir describes teammates arriving for an ordinary workday, recognizing that the firearms and tension were real, and fleeing the room, with the last person reportedly locking the door. It is one participant's account, but it captures how quickly a private feud frightened people who had no part in creating it. A locker room built around championship ambitions had emptied in panic. The worst public moment had not happened yet. On January 6, 2010, Gilbert Arenas turned 28 years old. That same day, the NBA suspended him indefinitely without pay. His birthday became the date on which the league formally separated Washington's biggest personality from the court. What tipped it over the edge wasn't just the guns in the locker. It was what Arenas did afterward, in front of a national television audience. Before a game against Philadelphia, during pre-game introductions, he pointed finger guns at his own teammates, mugging for the cameras, treating the whole catastrophe like a punchline. Commissioner David Stern watched a franchise star make light of a firearms scandal on live TV, and Stern said flatly that Arenas was not currently fit to take the court in an NBA game. That was the end of the leash. The legal machinery moved fast. Within days, Arenas was charged with carrying a pistol without a license and pleaded guilty to a felony count of carrying an unlicensed pistol outside a home or business. By the end of January, both he and Crittenden had been suspended for the rest of the season. Arenas published an apology in the Washington Post, acknowledging that he had failed as a role model and made light of a serious situation. The apology mattered, but it could not undo the plea. In March, he received 2 years of probation, 30 days in a halfway house, 400 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine. He served the halfway house portion that spring, while the suspension reportedly cost him around $7.5 million in salary. The man who had worn his doubters on his back had now created a legitimate reason for criticism. The number 0 once represented fearless self-belief. The incident made that same confidence look reckless. The two players involved would leave the episode on very different paths. For Arenas, the ending became a slow professional fade. When he returned to Washington for the 2010-2011 season, he dropped the number that had defined him and switched to 9, saying he wanted to place the incident behind him. The change could not erase the past, but it showed that even Arenas understood 0 no longer carried only the defiant meaning he had given it. In December of 2010, Washington traded him to Orlando for Rashard Lewis. The city was new, but the old explosion did not return. After the 2011 lockout, he was widely reported as the first player waived under the new amnesty clause. Memphis signed him for what became his final NBA season. He then played one more professional campaign with the Shanghai Sharks in 2012 and 13, a final attempt to keep the career alive after the NBA had moved on. Crittenden's later path became far darker. In 2015, he was sentenced to 23 years in prison in an unrelated criminal case. That later crime cannot serve as retroactive proof about every disputed detail of the locker room confrontation. The incident itself was serious enough. Arenas damaged a career and public identity he had spent years building, while frightened teammates were pulled into a dispute they did not create. The amnesty clause allowed Orlando to remove the remaining contract from its books, and contemporary accounts described Arenas as the first player waived under it. The symmetry is difficult to miss. Early in his career, the league created a provision associated with his rise and designed to help teams retain second-round discoveries. Near the end, he became the first prominent example of a provision designed to escape a contract that no longer worked. One career had exposed two opposite problems in NBA roster building. And that's the thing that makes Gilbert Arenas so hard to sort out even now, because the numbers were real. 3 All-Star selections, a near 30-point scorer at his peak, the buzzer beaters, the 60 on the Lakers, the 54 with Colangelo in his sights, the shot that ended Washington's playoff drought after more than 20 years. That man was headed towards something lasting. That man was a problem for anybody who had to guard him with the game on the line. His body interrupted the peak before the story could develop naturally, and his own judgment then inflicted damage no surgeon could repair. Injury and misconduct should not be blended into one excuse. Together, however, they explain why a guard capable of carrying Washington became better remembered as a warning than as the late-game force he had been. 0 began as a challenge, the number of minutes other people expected him to deserve. By the end, it had become a harder question. How much of the promised career was left after the knee, the lost seasons, and the decision in that locker room? The answer was not 0.